Have you ever wondered if divine encounters are possible in our modern world? The notion may seem far-fetched, yet my personal experience stands as a testament that these encounters are not relics from a distant past. They're as real and transformative today as they were in biblical times. My encounter with the divine was an echo of the conversion of Saul of Tarsus, a man who would later become known as Paul, one of the most influential apostles in the New Testament. On his way to Damascus, he was enveloped by a light from heaven. A voice thundered, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" This encounter marked a turning point in Paul's life, changing not only his name, but his very being. In my case, the encounter was not on a dusty road to Damascus, but it was no less profound and life-altering. The voice that spoke to me was not from a blinding light, but it was no less divine. The words were not an accusation, but an invitation to a higher calling. Just as Paul's encounter led to his transformation from a persecutor of Christians to a proclaimer of the gospel, my encounter sparked a metamorphosis in my life. The once barren landscape of my existence bloomed into a verdant field of spiritual growth and service. The encounter wasn't just about hearing a divine voice, it was about the transformation that followed. It was about seeing the world with new eyes, feeling a new heart beating in my chest, and realizing a purpose that I had been oblivious to. Our encounters may differ in details, but the essence remains the same. A divine intervention that changes the course of our lives forever. These are not mere coincidences or figments of our imagination. They are divine appointments marked on the heavenly calendar long before we were born. Just like Paul, the encounter was a turning point in my life, an unexpected journey that led me to my divine calling. In my encounter, God gave me a vision, a sight that was both humbling and awe-inspiring. This vision, much like Moses' encounter with the divine on Mount Horeb, was more than a mere spectacle. It was a message, a divine mandate that stirred my spirit and set the course for my journey. The vision began with a stark landscape, barren and bleak, under the grip of a harsh winter. I saw myself disembarking a plane, stepping into this desolate scene. But as my feet touched the ground, a miraculous transformation unfolded. Where once there was desolation, life sprouted. The landscape burst into a vibrant expanse of greenery. The plants, once dry and withered, now flourished, green and lush under the winter sun. This vision, however, was more than a mere spectacle of transformation. It was symbolic, riddled with divine implications. The plain represented the transition from one phase of life to another. The harsh winter, a symbol of life's trials and tribulations. The barren landscape, the spiritual desolation that often engulfs our world. But as I stepped out, the transformation that unfolded was a divine intervention, a testament to God's power to breathe life into the most desolate situations, to turn winter into spring, to bring spiritual revival to a world in desperate need. Just as Moses' encounter on Mount Horeb was not just an event, but a turning point in his life and the lives of the Israelites, so too was this vision a turning point in mine. It was a divine mandate, a call to action, a call to be an instrument of transformation, to bring spiritual revival, to be a beacon of hope in a world often shrouded in spiritual desolation. The vision was a call to step out in faith, to trust in God's power to transform, to believe in the possibility of spiritual renewal. It was a call to action, a divine mandate that I, like Moses, had to fulfill. Like Moses, the vision was not just a spectacle but a message, a divine mandate that I had to fulfill. The encounter and the vision were just the beginning of a transformative journey. This wasn't just a change of scenery or a change of season. It was a profound, life-altering transformation that echoed the experiences of those who came before me. Just as Paul was transformed on the road to Damascus, my encounter with God brought about a seismic shift in my life. Before Damascus, Paul was Saul, a persecutor of Christians. But after his encounter with Christ, he became a fervent apostle, spreading the gospel far and wide. My story mirrors this. Where once I was an observer, God's calling turned me into a participant, a worker in his divine vineyard. And then there was Moses. His encounter with God on Mount Horeb was no less transformative. From a simple shepherd, he became a leader, guiding the Israelites out of Egypt and into their promised land. Similarly, my meeting with God propelled me from the mundane to the extraordinary, from the natural to the supernatural. The landscape of my life went from a winter of spiritual dryness to a spring of spiritual abundance. Just as the land turned green when I stepped out of the plane in my vision, my spiritual life blossomed, bearing fruits of love, joy, peace, and righteousness. But this transformation was not without its challenges. Like Paul, who faced shipwrecks, imprisonment, and persecution, and like Moses, who faced Pharaoh's wrath and the Israelites' rebellion, my journey was marked by trials and tribulations. But these trials served a divine purpose. They were God's refining fire, purifying me, molding me, and preparing me for the work He had in store for me. This transformation was not about me. It was not for my glory, but God's. It was a testament to His power, His grace, His love. It was proof that He still calls and equips ordinary people for extraordinary tasks, just as He did with Paul, Moses, and countless others throughout history. Change is inevitable after a divine encounter. It is God's way of preparing us for our divine assignments. God's calling is not an event, but a process. It's a divine orchestration that aligns us with His purpose. A profound truth that resonates as we delve deeper into the narrative of my calling, following the encounter and the vision. Just as the Apostle Paul was called on the road to Damascus, my calling was an experience that transcended the ordinary. Paul, who was then known as Saul, was on a mission to persecute Christians when a light from heaven suddenly shone around him. He heard a voice, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" This encounter marked the beginning of Paul's transformation and calling into God's service. Similarly, my encounter, my vision, was followed by a calling that was as profound as it was transformative. The landscape that turned from winter's barrenness to spring's lush greenery at my touch symbolized the spiritual transformation that God was orchestrating. Just as I was used as an instrument to bring about physical transformation, I was being called upon to be a conduit of spiritual transformation for His people. In the book of Exodus, we find another powerful example of God's calling in the life of Moses. God appears to Moses in a burning bush on Mount Horeb and commissions him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Despite his initial hesitation, Moses accepts the call and becomes God's instrument to liberate His people. These biblical narratives of Paul and Moses serve as powerful reminders that God's callings are as relevant today as they were in biblical times. They were ordinary men like you and me who were called for extraordinary missions. They were chosen not because of their qualifications, but because of their willingness to yield to God's purpose. This is the essence of a divine calling. It is a journey that begins with an encounter, progresses through a vision, and culminates in a transformative mission. It is a journey that aligns us with God's purpose, a journey that transforms us into vessels of His grace and love. God's callings are never about us, but about His people and His kingdom. Answering God's call marked the beginning of a journey filled with challenges, victories, and divine revelations. As with every journey, the first step is often the most daunting, but it is also the most crucial. It's the step that takes us from the familiar into the unknown, echoing the experiences of Paul and Moses. Like Paul, who was transformed on the road to Damascus, my journey began with a divine encounter. The scales fell from my eyes and I was no longer who I had been. The world around me was the same, but I saw it through a lens transformed by God's grace. And just as Moses discovered on Mount Horeb, this journey would demand more than I could give on my own. It required a dependence on God, a surrender to His will, a burning bush experience that would consume me, yet leave me unscathed. On this journey, I found myself in places I never dreamt I would be, just as Paul found himself preaching the gospel to the Gentiles. My feet touched foreign soil, and like the vision where I stepped off the plane, the landscape around me blossomed into life. This journey, much like Moses' wanderings in the desert, was not without its trials. There were moments of doubt, moments of hardship, but each of these moments brought me closer to God. They were the wilderness experiences that tested my faith and refined me, shaping me into the vessel God intended me to be. In the end, the journey is not about the challenges we face, but about how we face them. It's about the transformation that takes place within us as we answer God's call. It's about moving closer to the heart of God, understanding His purposes, and bearing witness to His power and grace. Every journey with God is unique, yet they all lead us closer to Him and His purposes. When God calls, He equips. He empowers us supernaturally to fulfill our divine assignments. The supernatural is not an alien concept in the realm of the divine. It is as much a part of God's work as the air we breathe, or the light that guides us. Let's delve into the instances of supernatural events in my journey. After my divine encounter, I found myself in the midst of inexplicable phenomena. I saw the barren land bloom at my touch, the bleak winter give way to vibrant spring. It was as if nature itself bowed to the power of the divine, an echo of my transformation. Now let's draw parallels to the lives of Paul and Moses, two figures deeply woven into the fabric of biblical history. Paul, on his way to Damascus, was struck blind by a light from heaven, a divine intervention that changed the course of his life, leading him from persecutor to proclaimer of the word of God. Moses, on the other hand, encountered God in a burning bush on Mount Horeb, a bush that burned but was not consumed, a supernatural phenomenon that marked the beginning of Moses' journey as a deliverer of his people. These events, as disparate as they may seem, share a common thread, the touch of the divine that transcends the mundane, steering the course of lives towards a higher calling. Just as Paul's temporary blindness opened his spiritual eyes to the truth, the blooming of the barren land at my touch signified a spiritual awakening, a rebirth. And akin to Moses' burning bush, the transformation of the landscape served as a beacon, guiding my steps in the divine journey. It's essential to understand that these supernatural occurrences are not mere anomalies. They are divine interventions, God's way of communicating, guiding, and affirming His presence in our lives. Experiencing the supernatural is part and parcel of a divine journey, a testament to God's active involvement in our lives. The supernatural is not to be feared, but embraced, as it is through these extraordinary events that we truly experience the presence of God. Our testimonies are powerful tools that God uses to inspire, encourage, and draw others to Him. In the grand tapestry of life, each thread is a testimony, a story of God's indelible work in our lives. My own story echoes those of the great Apostle Paul and the prophet Moses. Like Paul, I too encountered God in a way that was as sudden as it was transformative. God revealed Himself to me and took me on a vision that forever altered the course of my life. This divine revelation was akin to Moses' encounter at Mount Horeb. There Moses stood before a burning bush that was not consumed, and he heard the voice of God. In my vision, I saw myself stepping off a plane into a barren winter landscape. But the moment my feet touched the ground, the entire scene sprang to life, bursting into vibrant green. The parallels between these biblical testimonies and my own are unmistakable. They serve as a reminder that God continues to call His people in the same ways He did in biblical times. It's not about the grandeur of the encounter, but the authenticity of the experience and the transformation that follows, just as Paul was transformed from a persecutor of Christians to one of the most influential apostles, and Moses from a shepherd in the wilderness to the liberator of his people. My life too took a turn that I could never have anticipated. I, Pastor Francis, was called to serve, to bring life where there was desolation, to bring hope where there was despair. Our testimonies are not just our stories, they are God's stories of His faithfulness and love. They bear witness to His power, His mercy, and His unwavering commitment to us. As we share our testimonies, we are essentially sharing the story of God's work in our lives and His enduring love for humanity. In my upcoming book, The God of My Calling, I delve deeper into my divine encounter and journey. This work is a profound exploration of my personal experiences with God, akin to the miraculous meetings of Paul on his way to Damascus and Moses on Mount Horeb. It's a narrative that intertwines theology, spirituality, and personal transformation, painting a vivid picture of the divine encounters that have shaped my life. The God of My Calling seeks to illuminate the divine's ceaseless call, echoing through the ages from biblical times to the present day. It underscores the belief that God continues to reach out to us, guiding and shaping our paths, just as He did with Paul and Moses. The book also delves into the extraordinary vision I received from God, a vision of transformation and renewal, where the touch of the divine turned a barren winter into a thriving spring. This vision serves as a metaphor for the transformative power of God's calling, a power that can turn the barren areas of our lives into flourishing fields of purpose and service. One of the key themes of The God of My Calling is the journey that follows the divine encounter. It explores the trials, triumphs, and lessons learned as I answered God's call and embarked on a spiritual journey akin to those of the biblical heroes. On a more personal level, The God of My Calling is also a testimony of how God has used me in supernatural ways. It provides insightful anecdotes and experiences that highlight the incredible ways God can work through us when we open ourselves to His calling. The objective of The God of My Calling is not just to share my journey, but to inspire you, the reader, to seek your own encounter with the divine. It's an invitation to embrace the divine calling that God has for each one of us, a calling that can lead to a life of purpose, fulfillment, and spiritual growth. My prayer is that The God of My Calling will inspire you to seek your own divine encounter and embrace your divine calling. Divine encounters are not a thing of the past. They are real, transformative, and accessible to everyone. Throughout this discussion, we've journeyed together, exploring the profound moments of divine encounters. From the dramatic meeting of Paul on the road to Damascus to Moses' awe-inspiring encounter at Mount Horeb, we've seen how these events profoundly altered the course of their lives. We've delved into the vision that unfolded before my eyes, a potent symbol of transformation and renewal. A landscape, once barren and gripped by winter, bloomed into vibrant life with my arrival, an echo of the spiritual transformation that divine encounters can bring. We've examined the calling, an irresistible beckoning from the divine, similar to the callings of Paul and Moses. A calling that, once heard, cannot be ignored and forever changes the individual, molding them into a vessel for the divine will. We've journeyed together through the supernatural, witnessing how God's power manifests in our world in ways that defy our understanding, yet resonate deeply within our souls. Finally, we've shared in the testimony, the personal recounting of how God has worked supernaturally in our lives. All these experiences are documented in the upcoming book, The God of My Calling, a chronicle of divine encounters and their transformative impact. Yet, these stories are not the end, but rather the beginning. They are an invitation for you to seek out your own divine encounters, to open your heart and mind to the possibility of a personal, transformative experience with the divine. Share your experiences. Speak of your transformations. Let your voice join the chorus of those who have encountered the divine, adding to the rich tapestry of testimonies that bear witness to the living, active presence of God in our world today. May you too encounter God in a personal and transformative way, just like Paul, Moses, and countless others before us.